I'd like to talk about intelligence versus talent. I personally do not believe anybody is smart, and I'm going to prove that in this video. Basically, what sparked this video was that a Republican had said that that's the problem with communists and liberals, that they think everyone has the same abilities and the same aptitudes. Well, I actually do believe that everyone pretty much has the same abilities for the most part and the same aptitude for the most part, except for those who suffer mental retardation. I would use the example of Africans doing well in school and African Americans not doing so well. The reason would be their state of mind and their study habits as opposed to their genetic makeup. A lot of these Republicans would argue that white people have invented all this stuff and that they have the good jobs, etc., etc. And I would chop this up more to social pressures, bad study habits, bad African American cultural habits, etc. Because African Americans are actually the ones who are mixed with white. Africans are more pure black for the most part. And so, this, you would think that maybe it would be because of people from North Africa who are not as black as sub-Saharan Africans. But that's not the case. If you take sub-Saharan Africans and you compare them on average to African Americans, their test scores do a lot better. So anyway, first let's look at the people who can memorize long series of facts and solve complicated, complex math problems in their head, like 1,600,027 times 395.2438, right? And they can solve it in a pretty reasonable amount of time. These people are also talented because those same people are very lousy when it comes to philosophy. They're very lousy when it comes to insight. They're just good at doing that one thing. Just like an artist is good at doing that, making art, or a musician is good at making music. These people who can memorize these long, complicated problems aren't the best singers, and they aren't the best poets. They aren't the best hip-hop artists, etc., etc. These are things that do require another form of talent or another form of intelligence. I think it's more proper to say forms of talents, or they're talented in certain areas rather than saying forms of intelligence, because this can be quite tricky and complicated, and it doesn't really need to be that complicated. It's much more correctly and precisely stated by saying different types of talent. So, a lot of Republicans are racist and they have a lot of temerity, audacity, or boldness when it comes to talking about people of color and looking at the effect and not examining the root cause of certain behaviors. Okay, so another proof would be there are classes that are dedicated to developing good study habits. Why would these classes exist if it's not proven that people with good study habits do better in school? A lot of the people who do great in school are from foreign countries where they come here with a lot of ambition and an appropriate state of mind, a positive state of mind, arguably. A lot of the people who are inventors or who achieve a high amount of academic excellence may seem weird to you and me, but they actually are very well assimilated. They're very well cultured, arguably. They're very in a mind state where it's conducive or helpful to achieve optimal performance in school. If somebody goes to school, for example, like, I don't want to do this shit, fuck this shit, the white man is not fair anyway, the system isn't fair anyway, I can't wait to get out of school so I can play basketball and smoke weed, of course, they're not going to do good in school. But if somebody goes into school with the attitude of, well, I better do good here, later on in life it's going to pay off, or I'm interested in this topic, because I'm not as offended by it as other people are, who see through the lies in history and go, oh, hell no, they didn't say that, And, of course, personally I've noticed that I was one of the top students in the classes where there was a lot of less social pressure, specifically from white America, or white people, than I was in the ones where there were. You know, in a boarding school I went to where there was a lot of social pressure to act white and to dress white, I didn't do so well because I resented it. I didn't want nothing to do with it. I couldn't wait for it to be over with. When I went to summer schools, I was one of the top students in the class because there was less social pressure to act white and to be white, and some of the teachers weren't white. And recently in college, you know, in my math class and stuff like that, I was the top student. You know, in my public speaking class, I was had one of the top grades. Same with the race relations class and the different classes where I wasn't as offended by the material. I did well, you know. So I would also like to point out the networks of privilege and the institutional racism that goes on, and how, you know, people kind of smile at you with a smirk, you know, a malicious smile, and they say, well, they basically discourage black people in school, and they basically encourage white people in school. Not always, but it's enough to where it's going to affect things. So that, you know, there's a lot of Republicans in the state that I live in general. For example, there's places such as Santa Cruz and San Francisco and Berkeley that have UC Santa Cruz, UC San Francisco, UC Berkeley, and these kind of liberal schools. But the rest of the state is Republican for the most part. If you don't think so, ask yourself why marijuana legalization didn't pass in California, even though there's tons of people who smoke weed in California. We have reportedly the best quality marijuana in California. So why didn't it pass? Because there's a lot of Republicans in California. There's a lot of people who push white social norms. I can't stress to you how harmful white social norms are to people. If we lived in a country that wasn't so whitewashed, I assure you that African Americans would do better. But African Americans are more offended by white oppression than Africans are. For example, who are the most outspoken critics of white oppression in America? Are they Africans or are they African Americans? Of course they're African Americans. You know, Khalid Muhammad, Malik Shabazz, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, Eldridge Cleavage, Huey Newton, Bobby Seale. They were almost always African Americans because African Americans feel the most tension, the most resentment, and they're the most oppressed by white social norms because they're the most offended by them, probably rightfully so. So there is no such thing as being smart, but there is such thing as being talented. Because being smart implies that you have this kind of intelligence that, you know, if you're good at math, you're going to be good at philosophy, you're going to be good at science, you're going to be good at military strategy, you're going to be good at arts and music, but that's never ever the case. When I was younger, there was this saying called a Renaissance man. A Renaissance man was something that was extremely rare and greatly celebrated when it happened, because it was somebody who had multiple talents. So when using that phrase, white people concede my point that there is no such thing as being smart, there's only a such thing as being talented, but when they want to oppress black people and justify why they don't want to help them out more, why they don't want to address the social problems that face black people daily, they'll say, well, they're just not as smart as us. Well, they're just not as able as us. Well, why should we help the hopeless and waste our money on them when we can support those who are truly talented and make this world a better place? This is the ignorance of the conservatives of the Republican Party. They are stuck on stupid. Granted, I don't agree with feminism, which is basically the effeminization of men, especially black people who are the most manly of men, not just because on average they probably have a bigger penis, or on average they are more aggressive than other men are, or on average they're better fighters than other men are, but because being a man comes from where all men come from, which is Africa. And so what I see constantly is white people downplaying the truth, focusing on the effect to justify the cause, basically. They're going to ignore the cause, and they're going to keep on contributing to the cause while saying, well, that's the effect, we shouldn't help them because of that, while white people are the cause. And I know this without any doubt, because I've never lost a debate with a white person. I've completely played them out. But I went to many white institutions where they had better grades in class. What does that tell you? When it came to something I'm passionate about, they couldn't compete. But when it came to their white way of doing things, they had the upper hand and did better. Thank you.